make sure that you leave. But if you hear multiple dogs, it's perceived to be demons. And
ooh, hellhounds.
yes, exactly. So there's a difference. Local legend says that one dog barking is just making sure that you don't fuck with anything, and 3 dogs barking, especially since a lot of people actively hear them getting closer.
Damn.
What's been said about it is that the 3 dogs or the hellhounds
no,
are
thank
essentially
you.
hunting you.
Not today, Satan. Don't you come for me.
Yeah. Another thing about the woods, we've talked a little bit about this natural circle that is formed by some of the trees. It's really close to the road. A lot of people, because it is a wooded area, have walked back there and felt as though they had an ominous feeling because they walked out to tarps with a bunch of bones on them, because the bones came from there, and because it is such a natural circle, a lot of times it's easier to sun bleach it, as well as if there's any remnant of organic material that's still left on it, a lot of times the animals and the wildlife that are there will come and pretty much clean the bones. One of the biggest and most well-known thoughts about the woods is that they change. So you could be following a path, turn around, and there's no path. It's only about an acre, but sometimes people have reported that they've been lost in the woods for several hours. From the cemetery all the way back to the road usually takes about 20-30 minutes, depending on how leisurely you're walking, how much brush is in your way. But a lot of times people have come back and said, I was lost, I turned around, I looked at the same tree, it had a mark on it, and the path was gone. Or there's a lot of paths that lead to nowhere.
You think you're walking in one direction only to pass the same landmark or tree that you've walked past?
Yeah, sometimes when you're going in at nighttime, which there is a separate entrance, once again, we don't recommend that you do that, especially since you could get ticketed.
It's illegal.
Yes. So a lot of times the neighbors will report you as well.
Yes.
Because it's already a pain in the butt to look through your lawn and realize that there's people crawling through your lawn. But there is a back way in. You could do it during the day, totally legally. It's absolutely fine. Just make sure that you don't park anywhere near where the signs say not to park. A lot of people say as they go in at night or as they're entering from the back way into the cemetery or into the woods that it is accommodating. It looks as though the trails are very large. If they get spooked or if they decide that they don't want to be there and they go to turn around, a lot of people have said that the pathway will have either changed or disappeared, or it will have shrunk to just one singular person being able to walk down.
Jeez.
And things that weren't in your way before would be maybe in your way the second time.
Yeah, those woods are messed up.
Yeah, they're very strange.
And they want to keep you.
Yes. That's kind of it, except for our personal stories. So my personal stories, the first time that we've ever been there, and this is something that's happened to a couple friends of mine as well, it was so heavy and sad. It was an overwhelming feeling to literally hands and knees crawl around and collect as much garbage as I could. As we're going through, I started panicking because I saw this guy walking through, and I remember very strongly that he had a red tracksuit jacket on, but it's one of the old racing stripes up the sides of it, and he had a backpack. We watched him walk to the area that would only go to the quarry pond, and then you'd have to come back up and walk back in through the cemetery to go anywhere else. And we remember following him. You can hear it on the tape and watch us following him through the cemetery. When we looked at the tape later, we started realizing that we watched him go down to the quarry pond, but never came back up.
Oh, weird.
And we had walked down that same path. I was worried that he was going to mess with something. He's not on the tape at all. There's a little black shadow.
He's not on the tape at all?
Not at all. I don't feel great about this guy because he seemed really sketchy. You watch the camera follow literally nothing.
Oh, yep. Weird.
Because we knew that we were going to come back at night, had decided that we were going to walk out through the back way with the intent to just make ourselves more acclimated with the way to get in and out of the woods so that the nighttime could, because, of course we thought we were little ghost hunters. As we were walking back, and I am a smoker, but at the time was not smoking. It was about 70, 75 degrees, even in the woods, which oftentimes people report that the woods and the cemetery, even though it is completely devoid of tree cover, are both much colder than the areas around them. And I remember looking at the ground because I am an incredibly klutzy person, because that's who I am, and breathing and watching my breath come out of my mouth. At the same time, my ex had asked if I had seen the runner that went by that ran into a tree, disappeared.
Oh.
Yeah. So when we went back that night, we went back with 2 of our friends. Once again, don't do it. It's not great for people to do it, especially as it's now believed that it's so tumultuous in the woods that it might not actually be safe, not only for spirits and or possibly demons, but also because people are weird and we don't want people to get murdered either.
There's a lot of weirdos.
Yeah. We went looking for the marble. Everything that was around my feet is still in the exact same place. My ex had handed me the camera. You'll see it past my feet, and then the marble is right by the very front toe of my shoe. So it couldn't have been something that was dislodged, especially since it was something that was pressed really hard into the ground. People see silhouettes of humans and assume that there's some sketchy person following them through the woods.
Like shadow people activity, kind of?
Yes. They're only seen in the woods, except for I think I read once that someone had seen it, but it was when the tree was felled. I also heard children singing. A lot of people hear different things, so if they're attempting to scare you off and they think that it can be something that would get you to leave, and another person in your party could hear something different. There's a premise that if you're seeing a ghost or you're hearing, then it might be showing itself to you in a way that it thinks you'd be most comfortable or
uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to tell a story about something that happened to me. I think I was a senior in high school. My friend Christina had just recently gotten into photography and wanted to try out her fancy new camera. I, also being a photographer, enjoyed going and just taking long walks and doing shoots with her. We brought our friend Corey with us, and we all decided to go and take some photos there. It was going to be a good day. So when we got to the cemetery, it was real muggy outside, overcast. It had been raining off and on all day. There were less people there, or so we thought. We're in the cemetery. She's taken pretty photos of Corey with this bright red umbrella, and I posed in a few of the photos with Corey. And Christina was like, hey, I want to get some of her by herself. Why don't you just come over here and stand by me? So I go, I bum a cigarette, and we're done and we're leaving. And on the way out, they see a path that I've never seen before. To this day, I still have a hard time finding where that opening was.
There is a small footpath that leads to the back way in.
They really wanted to go walk down this path and just check it out real quick. And they were like, okay, well, I mean, you can go wait at the car for us. This will only take a minute. I don't want to be separated. So I went with them, and there was nothing spectacular back there. We just walked and walked. 10 minutes of walking into the woods gets you a pretty decent way in. The path that we were on, it just flat out stopped right in front of us. We had gotten to the end of it. We couldn't go any further because it was all brush and this like crazy tall grass. And we were like, okay, well, then that's it. There's nothing else back here to see. Let's turn around and head back to the car. And the path that we were walking on was gone. A worn down footpath. Just gone. Your eyes play tricks on you, whatever. We'll just walk back in the general direction. So we start heading back in the direction that we came from, and before we know it, we are lost in the brush of the woods. And I am covered in spiders, which is my least favorite thing in the entire world. Everyone's getting a little panicky because we're lost. We aren't finding our way back. It should have been very easy. Let's really think about this. What direction do we need to go in? Christina broke a little twiggy branch on a tree, and it was just bent at a 90-degree angle, dangling, and we started walking again. If we just head in one direction, we'll come out by something. We walked for another half hour. Now it's kind of starting to get dark out, and we came upon a tree with a little branch that had been bent and dangling, and it was the exact same one. We walked in a circle. Everyone's getting real panicky. We're not exactly sure how we're going to get out of this mess. We came out to a weird, perfect circular opening in the middle of all the trees. It was just a grassy area, and it had all the tarps with the bones on it, which, yes, now as an adult, I know that those were probably animal bones, but being scared and lost in the woods and also a teenager wasn't my favorite. The whole time we think that we're trying to walk back towards the road where our car is parked. We've actually been walking the exact opposite direction, and when we came out of the woods, because we could hear the cars on the street, we emerged from the woods right in front of a dead deer carcass. The opposite side of the forest. We had to walk all the way around it on the very busy street to get back to the car. When we had gotten back to Christina's place and she was uploading the photos, and there's this one photo right when I stepped out of view because she wanted those pictures of Corey by herself, right behind where I was standing next to Corey. In front of that tree, there's this guy peeking out from the side of the tree. He's got a face and he's got hair. This guy had like a red and black almost kind of like flannelly looking shirt on. There was nobody in the cemetery with us. Christina's like, Ty, I told you to get out of the photo. What are you doing? What do you mean? I bummed a cigarette from you. I stood next to you. We had a conversation. You know I don't own a flannel. We realize that, and it doesn't look anything like me. And he's just peeking out of that tree, looking right at the camera.
I went with a couple friends of mine last week. There were a couple times that two of us would split off from the other one would stay in one place. And he said that he had turned to go back towards the cemetery and the path that we had used to get there, which was easily marked because of right now there's a lot of trees that are marked for removal. It was easily marked with orange paint along this trail that we were following. And he turned around, saw the orange paint on the trees, but no trail.
There were some Lincoln Way kids who had gotten a permit to go there because it was for one of the classes. The intention was to spend the night in the cemetery part of Bachelor's Grove. While they were there, and it's all on the video for the class that they had submitted it to, apparently one of the girls in the group starts freaking out because she says that something is scratching her. And she gets up and she runs out of the cemetery, and all of the other students that were with her followed her out. And it was upon reviewing the footage that they saw that there was an orb literally bouncing on her back the entire time.
Oh, I forgot about the thing under my car. Is it the Baba Wolf? It might have been the Baba Wolf. It was scratching at the bit of my car.
Oh, no.
As we were driving home one of the nights, I remember dropping off friends at another mutual friend's house. I was going to stay with my ex that night. I started driving in my car. I kept stopping, looking under my car until my ex had come out to ask me why I kept stopping. And I thought I had grabbed a branch underneath my car and then would continue to drive and then hear the scratching again and look to see if maybe I just was stupid and didn't see it. We both had flashlights out. We're like looking under it. And then that continuous scratching the entire way to the house started also occurring in the house while we were there by ourselves. And there were no other animals, no other anythings inside of the house at the same time.
That is way spookier. That is way spookier than that first story.
I've also, and this is the thing about the gatekeeper, and this is why I tend to believe more that people have seen him in an old cloak with the top hat and the nice dapper clothing.
Which is how I saw him in that photo where he's clear as day.
Yeah, when Ty's ex was
visiting the cemetery with some relatives.
And the relatives started to provoke.
In a real nasty kind of way.
In the background, there's what looks like a man with an unfurled cape that is walking towards them, and then
a dressy white shirt. He's got a top hat on. That cape is just outward because he is marching. You can tell there is movement happening. He's darting right at them. Good photos were taken. There was another amazing photo that they got, and it's taken through the fence. There's this woman who is also incredibly clear. And she's wearing a long sleeve black dress and she's got a white bonnet on and she's kneeling in the grass and she's got her hands up in front of her together like she's praying.
Okay.
They also that day after they started provoking, my aunt got this weird feeling on her back.
Mm-hmm.
She had lifted up her shirt and her name was scratched into her own back.
Right.
Upside down and backwards.
Which, I mean, super easy to do, clearly.
Yeah. Be respectful when you go there.
And this is a personal story from someone that I used to know. When they were walking to the cemetery, it was not super late at night, but it was definitely nighttime. Were on the path and they thought they saw a man in the way of the street, and then they continued to walk forward, and then one of them had said that he felt like he didn't want to go forward anymore and that he thought to maybe turn around, and they had seen him again but a little bit closer, and then they continued to press forward. Rocks were thrown from the forest or pieces of tree.
What?
Yes. And then the last straw, when they got too close to the cemetery after they all kind of got an ooky feeling, once again this is reported, I wasn't there. A large piece of tree was dropped in front of them and almost hit them. And that's when they decided that maybe it wasn't time to go to the cemetery that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so. That's messed up.
Yeah. A lot of people have said that if they do walk towards the cemetery and do see the gatekeeper, that sometimes pieces of tree or forest or rocks or something get thrown at them from other locations, obviously, than the people that they're accompanied by. That's pretty much what we have on Bachelors. Obviously, as much history as we could find and personal stories. So this is the beginning of our first set of Campfire Tales. Hopefully we'll be able to do really neat episodes that are bonus episodes for the future. But that also does include any stories that you want to tell us. So this kind of ends our campfire tale.
And send us your personal stories, shotsinthedarkpodcast@gmail.com.
Or talk with us on social media.
We have an Instagram, it's Shots in the Dark Podcast. We are